Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teacher Excel sa Thomson, or you can call me Teacher Etchel. Some people call me Teacher Chel for short. And I'll be with you today as we zoom in on two important domains of development. Let's get moving and thinking with our little explorers. Magandang hapon once again to all our educators, parents, learning companions at home, and everyone here watching live at Rex Education. Thank you so much for taking the time this Saturday afternoon to be with us as we explore, learn, and discover the world of our little ones. This webinar is brought to us by Rex Education. The main goal and purpose are to empower us educampions to be able to support the holistic development of our kids by putting a spotlight on early childhood education. Ang mga teachers at educators are very familiar na sa Educampion, no? Initiative ng Rex. Ito yung education campaign natin dito. But parents and learning companions at home are also Educampions. We are champions of education for our children. We are duty-bound to respect, protect, and fulfill the right of every learner to quality education. And as we know, learning starts at home. This webinar aims to equip us with a guide, know-how, and tools to be educampions for our children. What do we mean when we say early childhood years are foundational years for learning? At ano nga ba ang dapat i-develop at tutukan sa ating mga kids through these critical years? In that episode, a mom and a dad joined us, sharing their experiences with their kids. Through that session, we also realized paano nga ba ang makakagawa ng higit na magandang learning environment for our kids at home. If you haven't watched that episode, the first episode, you can check out Rex Education's YouTube page to appreciate the series better. During our last episode, we said that there are 6 critical domains or developmental domains that are prescribed by the Early Childhood Care and Development Council of the Philippines that we need to monitor during the early years. These are physical health, well-being and motor development, cognitive and intellectual development, language development, creative aesthetic development, social emotional development, and character and values development. All these and more we'll learn from our speaker today. And to join us today is a faculty member of the Department of Family Life and Child Development, College of Home Economics at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She is finishing her PhD at Department of Early Childhood Education, Faculty of Education and Human Development, the Education University of Hong Kong. She is invited for several speaking engagements on the topic of early childhood by different organizations such as the ECCD Council, the OST, DepEd, and UNICEF, and co-authored research papers and journals on this critical topic in the education industry. Let's get moving and thinking with Teacher Charla Saamong.
Good day, everyone. I'm Charla Saamong, a faculty member from the Department of Family Life and Child Development from the University of the Philippines. For this session, I will share about key ideas on young children's development, which could help us as adults who spend time with young children, not only within our homes, but also within our schools and communities. More specifically, I will talk about 2 important developmental domains, the physical and the cognitive intellectual. We will learn about getting children to move and to think. We first proceed to learning about the most observable domain of young children's development, the physical domain. We readily see it when young children change in their height or weight, and we can tell that they are growing when they get taller or longer or heavier. We also see the changes in quality of how young children move. For example, we readily notice that our children might have moved from lying down to rolling over, or from walking, we see that they have become more adept in running. and then jumping. The physical domain is so observable that we often tie up young children's milestones with their physical milestones. The first stand, the first step, the first tooth, the first bicycle ride without trainer wheels. And the list goes on. Here we understand that physical development involves bone growth, muscle strength and control, development of motor skills, and coordination. Now, although we are typically more observant of young children's development in the physical sense, a helpful hint for us is to know that the physical domain is comprised of subcomponents: the gross motor domain, the fine motor domain, and the sensory perceptual domain. I will briefly describe each as we go along. The gross motor domain involves development of skills pertaining to use of larger muscles in the arms and legs and the whole body. Think of balancing the body, running with ease and control and direction, jumping on both feet, climbing, or operating a bicycle. All these require young children to use their large muscles. It is important to note that for physical development, there is some directionality to which children learn to coordinate or control their bodies. The head gets to be controlled first, then the upper body, then the lower extremities. You can see this directionality. Babies are able to lift their heads first before they can eventually roll over, then sit, then walk. The fine motor domain, on the other hand, involves the development of skills pertaining to use of smaller muscles in the hands, the fingers, and feet. When we talk about fine motor skills, we usually refer to skills related to young children's manipulation of small toys and objects like beads, buttons, or zippers, or the more advanced fine motor skills needed for drawing or writing, or even just holding drawing and writing implements. Now, here in fine motor skills, it is also important to understand that there is also some direction of development. Children learn to coordinate the use of their fine motor skills from inwards to outwards. Hence, young children learn to control their arms first, then their hands and their fingers. Now, the last subdomain is not typically described under the physical domain, but is also an essential aspect of young children's development, of movement and coordination. The sensory perceptual domain involves how young children develop the coordination of what they perceive in their senses and how this aids them to do a variety of fine and gross motor activities. Now, for example, in feeding, young children who put food in their mouth exercise the coordination of sensory perceptual skills and their fine motor skills. A young child who happens to kick a ball perceives the ball and is able to coordinate where his or her feet should kick or hit the ball to the direction he or she intends to. All these aspects of the physical domain are essential to young children's development and needs healthy and adequate support from their immediate environments. Now, there is an interesting yet alarming finding in research on physical activity done in the Philippines. This recent research, which is first of its kind in the Philippines and headed by a team from the University of the Philippines, found out that the physical activity of Filipino children and adolescents is currently rated as F, which is a failing mark. This research indeed opens the door to many questions, but among the most striking, I presume, would be the questions why? What can we do? Now, the physical development of today's children is in a different scenario than the children of yesterday. Young children of today has less and more. Less of open spaces and affordances for active play, while having more opportunities and access to technology and gadgets, which contributes to sedentary activities and less sleep. Sometimes, we also have a tendency to assume that since physical activity or development comes naturally, maybe this is something that we do not have a need to do a lot for. So one approach to enhance the physical domain is to consider a good balance of active playtime, sleep time, and quiet inactive time within the child's day. I mentioned a good balance because families have different needs and resources, and a good balance may appear differently from one family to another. A helpful tip, though, would be that the child's active play goes hand in hand with the sedentary time. Now, the longer time they spend on gadgets, for instance, the less time they engage in active play. The longer they engage in gadget play, the less quality of sleep they have. And the less quality and quantity of sleep they have, the lower the quality of their engagement in physical activities. We can also do more specific activities to enhance young children's growth and fine motor skills, encouraging children, regardless of sex, to participate in a variety of activities such as ball games, running, climbing, and jumping would allow them to exercise their big muscles. In the same manner, allowing young children to tinker with different materials like Play-Doh, blocks, crayons, cutting, drawing, or dressing up dolls with buttons and zippers will also enhance young children's fine motor skills and hand-eye coordination. Participating in simple household chores is also beneficial in the physical domain. Plucking vegetable leaves, helping in setting the table, sweeping the floor, or wiping the windows or shelves can help young children exercise both their fine and gross motor skills. The cognitive or intellectual domain is involved in learning, thinking, problem solving, and organizing ideas and thoughts to make sense of the world around us. In simple terms, sometimes the cognitive development is related with numeracy skills, literacy and language skills, and problem-solving skills. Now, while the physical development is the most observable domain, the cognitive or intellectual domain is said to be among the hardest to observe among young children. This is because it is difficult to assume what children are thinking, especially when they do not talk yet. Even as they begin to talk, we often fill in the blanks and assume their thoughts based on how they act. It is also noticeable that although all developmental domains are very important, the cognitive or intellectual domain typically gets much focus within our culture, which tends to put premium on the value of education or being educated. We often praise young children and even adults when they show their intellectual or cognitive abilities, like identifying the alphabet or counting, and we say, "Uy, ang tali-talino naman." But of course, cognitive and intellectual development is more than reciting the alphabet and numbers. This domain also relates to how young children make sense of their world, how they see the connections or causes and effects. For instance, and how they learn, how they understand that pressing the button of a toy will make it make a sound. All these are learned and enhanced through a consistent and active interaction with the things around them and with the people around them, which is why the early years is a great time to integrate play with learning. As with the physical domain, the cognitive intellectual domain is also composed of sets of skills that typically progress in quantity and quality as the young child develops. Now let's take, for example, learning how to read. Learning how to read starts long before a child is able to decode words, like in a traditional sense of reading. The reading journey begins even when the child listens to Papa or Mama or Lola, reading, telling a story, looking at the pictures, and asking questions about the stories. The reading skills progresses as the young child asks the teachers or the parents to repeat reading the story over and over again. Later, the child tries to say familiar words, then gains confidence to read more and more words, which later become sentences, then become stories that has meaning to them. Apart from reading and literacy, the cognitive aspect also deals with creativity, or being able to express ideas in unique ways, understanding of concepts such as numbers, colors, and shapes, memory, or the ability to store and recall information and ideas, concentration on tasks at hand, and reasoning or understanding the aspects of an experience. Given the example on reading, we get to understand that the cognitive and intellectual development of young children has some kind of sequence and progression. This means that enhancing the cognitive domain requires us to meet the children where they are. What are the child's current interests? What is their current level of understanding and processing of ideas, concretely or abstractly? There's a hint here. Young children learn through concrete experiences. Knowing where children are allows adults to appreciate that young children need to be involved in their own learning and that they could participate even in the simplest tasks at home, like sorting their toys according to the type or color. And meeting where the children are allows adults to encourage all types of play among young children, regardless of their sex. Pretend play or bahay-bahayan, guessing game, experiment-like games, tagu-taguan, among many others. Encouraging involvement of young children in their cognitive and intellectual development does not simply mean that it is only the children who are masters of their own learning. Theorists and researchers have recognized that collaborations, interactions, and relationships with other people, not limited to adults, make learning more meaningful and worthwhile. There is a concept of a famous educational psychologist, Vygotsky, who speaks about the role of more knowledgeable other, or MKO, in allowing the children to expand their thinking, as in the case of scaffolding. This is an example. A child invites you to his pretend restaurant and says you can order what you like. As a playmate or an MKO, you try asking for a menu. And when the child realizes he has none, you help expand the child's imagination and thinking. You now help each other make a menu as an expansion of his pretend play. Simply put, there is so much that adults and playmates can do to enhance young children's thinking skills. If parents and adults cannot join the child's play at a given time, it may be an opportunity for other family members to join the child. Schools and safe neighborhoods are also good venues for interactions with people other than their immediate family members. Now, the good thing about young children's development is that it is so holistic that enhancing one domain will also help in enhancing the other. In the case of the two domains I presented, a healthy physical development allows the young child to engage in more activities that enhances their cognitive skills. For example, a child who climbs some playground equipment also learned that taking one step at a time is safer compared to taking big strides where she may fall, a cause and effect. Another example, through listening to a story about animals, a child learns that the rabbits hop high and low and may get the inspiration to move like rabbits in her next active play with friends. Here, play is like a glue that holds and enhances all domains together, which is why play is really important in the early years.